Am I hot? Or let me rephrase, can you hear me? That might be a loaded question. All right. First of all, thank y'all for coming tonight. This service is unusual. It's a dark service, and it needs to be a dark service because we need to face the reality that we crucified Jesus. And when I say we did. Human beings, our sinful nature, crucified Jesus. So we need to be reminded of that. And how much better will that be on Sunday morning after you faced it that He really died for us? And then in 3 days, we're going to celebrate that He conquered death. But tonight, it is a dark service. There's going to be a lot of quietness. When we leave the service, it's a little different. When it's done, we just get up and we leave quietly. So it just feels a little different. It feels a little dark, and that's exactly the way it should feel. Also, you're going to have a chance to, that little piece of paper that I gave you, you can start writing on that now or any time during the service, and you're going to put one or two things, or maybe three or four, whatever you want to put on that little piece of paper. That's what you are laying at the foot of the cross. That could be something you're dealing with. Maybe it's doubt, maybe it's fear, maybe it's anger, maybe it's financial, whatever that might be. Maybe it's several things. You're going to come up here, and I'll let you know when it's time for you to come up here. You'll take a nail, you'll take the hammer, you'll have your piece of paper. I want you to fold it because this is a private thing, right? You fold it like that. You're going to stick it up here, and you're going to put a nail. And we want it to be quiet when we're doing that because I want you to hear those nails being driven. And just imagine being there when Jesus was nailed to the cross. That's why this service can be very meaningful. And when it's not your turn and you're in your pew, sometimes just closing your eyes and hearing the hammering can be very powerful. But that is your time to be in prayer with Jesus this evening. If you're watching online, we encourage you to also, you can't be here to physically nail something to the cross, but you can pray, Lord, I give you this. So we encourage you to do that during this service. Piper, can you turn that down just a little bit? I'm going to start singing Let It Go. Just a little. Tonight is Good Friday, which begins the Triduum. What that means is the service tonight does not end, but continues through Holy Saturday and ends when we close the Easter service on Sunday morning. So this night we will leave here in silence and darkness with only enough light to safely leave the service in silence. Remember, this in-between time of Jesus' death and burial is a holy time. It's a time to reflect on what God's love has done for us. During the service, you will be asked to take part in it. You will be asked to nail on the cross something very personal and private to yourself. Please fold your paper like we talked about a second ago. We will be here to hold the cross as you nail it, and we'll be here to assist you if you need it. But this is something we need to do. We need to give things to God. And we're going to do that tonight. We're going to lay it at the cross. Now let us begin our service with our call to worship. It should be on the screens. And this is the judgment that the light has come into the world, and we loved darkness rather than light. God is light, in whom there is no darkness at all. For God sent the Son into the world not to condemn the world, but that the world might be saved through Him. Let us sing together hymn number 298, When I Survey the Wondrous Cross.
Jesus and his disciples left the city for the Mount of Olives. As they walked, Jesus said to his disciples, "You will all desert me this very night. So it is written in the prophet Zechariah, 'Strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered.'" Then Peter protested, "Though all desert, I will remain by you." Jesus replied, "I tell you truly that in this very night, before the cock crows twice, you will deny me 3 times. Still, Peter maintained, "Even though I must die with you, I will never deny you." And so declared all the disciples.
Jesus halted at an olive grove called Gethsemane. Then going apart with Peter, James, and John, he left them on watch and continued a little farther alone. There he fell on his face in anguished prayer. Soon he returned to the 3 on watch and found them sleeping. Rousing them, he asked Peter, "Could you not watch with me for just 1 hour? Watch and pray that you are not put to the test, for the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." Again, Jesus went apart in troubled prayer. And again, he returned to find the disciples sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. A 3rd time, Jesus withdrew to pray, and a 3rd time he found the disciples sleeping. Then Jesus said, "Sleep on and finish your rest. Now is the time for the Son of Man to be delivered into the hands of sinners. Here comes my betrayer."
Jesus had not finished speaking before Judas, one of his own disciples, arrived with a group of Roman soldiers and other armed men from the temple. Now the betrayer had arranged with the authorities for a sign and has said, "The man whom I kiss is the one you want." In accordance with his arrangement, Judas went directly to Jesus and cried out, "Greetings, Master." Then he gave him the kiss. Jesus responded, "Judas, would you betray the Son of Man with a kiss?" Immediately the soldiers laid hands on Jesus and held him fast. Then one of the disciples with Jesus drew his sword and cut off an ear from the slave of the high priest. But Jesus said to him, "Sheath your sword. All who take up the sword will perish by the sword. Do you not know that I can call upon my Father, and that he will respond at once with more than 12 legions of angels?" Then turning to the mob, Jesus continued, "Have you come for me as against a rebel bandit with swords and clubs? Why did you not seize me in the temple where I sat teaching by day? Were you so afraid of the Jewish people that you must come for me by stealth? Nevertheless, your actions are fulfilling the words of the prophets." Then all of his disciples forsook him and fled.
Those who had seized Jesus brought him to Caiaphas, whom the Romans had made a high priest. Peter followed at a distance as far as the courtyard. There he sat with the attendants and warmed himself by the fire. The high priest had gathered his whole council, and they began to arrange the case against Jesus, which they would present to Pontius Pilate, the governor. The charge was that Jesus claimed to be king of the Jews, and they brought to many false witnesses, but to no avail. Finally, 2 came forward and testified, "We heard this man say, 'I will tear down the temple made with hands, and within 3 days build another made with no hands.'" The testimony was evidence that Jesus claimed the authority over the temple's affairs that traditionally belonged to only the rulers of Israel. And in those days, Israel was ruled by Rome. Yet even these witnesses were unable to agree to their testimony. Finally, Caiaphas stood up and examined Jesus directly. "Have you no answer to these charges?" demanded the high priest. Jesus remained silent and answered nothing. Then the high priest put the question of kingship in terms of royal titles, anointed and son of God. "Are you the anointed one, the son of the blessed?" He probed. Jesus answered, "I am, and you shall see the Son of Man seated at the right hand on the right hand of power and coming in the clouds of heaven." The high priest turned and said, "What need have we of witnesses? He has condemned himself." They all concurred that Jesus was indeed worthy of death. Then those holding Jesus began to spit on him. They covered his face and were striking him as they taunted him and said, "O anointed one, prophesy who it is who is striking you."
Now Peter was worming himself into the courtyard when a small slave girl entered. She comforted Peter and said, "You also were with this Jesus the Nazarene." Peter quickly gave a denial. "I do not know what you are talking about," he replied, and went outside into the gateway. Meanwhile, the crowd, the slave girl, followed Peter out and said to the bystanders, "This man is one of them." Again, Peter denied knowing Jesus. After a while, the bystanders said directly to Pete, "Surely you are one of them, for you speak with a Galilean accent." Then Peter began to swear with an oath, "I do not know this person of whom you are speaking." But the cock interrupted him as it crowded for the second time. Immediately Peter remembered how Jesus had said to him before the crowd twice, "You will deny me 3 times." He went out and wept bitterly.
When morning arrived, all of the chief priests, along with the other Roman collaborators, found Jesus and delivered him over to Pontius Pilate, the emperor Roman governor. When Judas saw what was happening, he knew that Jesus was doomed, and he repented. He returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and confessed, "I have sinned in betraying innocent blood." "What is that to us?" they responded. "That is your affair." Judas threw down the 30 pieces of silver in the temple. Then he went out and hanged himself. Picking up the silver pieces, the chief priest said, "It is unlawful to put this silver into the treasury, for it's blood money." Whereupon they used the money to buy the potter's field for the burial of strangers. Therefore the field is known to this day as the field of blood.
Jesus stood before the Roman governor as the accusers made their charge. "We found this man perverting our nation," they said. "He was forbidding us to pay taxes to the emperor and proclaiming himself anointed king." The governor asked, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "You have said so." The chief priests were accusing him of many things. Therefore Pilate again spoke to Jesus. "Have you no answer to give?" He asked. "Look at how many accusations they are making." Jesus astonished Pilate by remaining silent.
At that festival, the governor used to release a prisoner, and some were urging Pilate to do so at this time. Now there was a notable rebel in prison with those who had committed murder during the insurrection. His name was Jesus Barabbas. Therefore, the chief priests arranged the demonstration to demand Barabbas. Pilate asked them, "Whom do you want me to release for you? Jesus Barabbas or Jesus the Anointed One?" The crowd shouted, "Crucify him!" Pilate continued, "Are you certain of his guilt?" The crowd took up the chant, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Again, Pilate spoke, "Shall I crucify your king? We have no king but Caesar," cried the demonstrators. Then Pilate agreed to release Jesus Barabbas, but Jesus the Anointed One he handed over to his soldiers for scourging and crucifixion.
The soldier led Jesus away within the governor's palace. There they assembled the whole battalion. They clothed Jesus in the robe of purple. They set a crown of thorns upon his head and shoved a wreath between his fingers for a scepter. They began to mock him by nailing him before the proclaimer, "Hail, King of the Jews." They also spat upon him and smote him on the head with their spit. Then, after mocking him, they took away the purple, returned his own clothes, and brought him out to crucify.
On the road, they met an African of Cyrene named Simon, coming in from the countryside. Him they compelled to carry the cross. They brought Jesus to a place called Golgotha, which means skull. There they crucified him. They offered him wine mingled with myrrh, but he refused it. His garments they divided among themselves, casting lots of them. Over his head they inscribed the charge against him, the King of the Jews. Also there were two insurrectionists crucified with him, one to his right and one to his left. Those who passed by were shaking their heads in derision and saying, "So you would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days? Save yourself, come down from the cross." Likewise, the priestly collaborators mocked him as they said to one another, "He saved others. Himself he cannot save. Let the Anointed One, the King of Israel, come down from the cross that we may see and believe." Even the two crucified with him revealed him.
At this time, we're going to invite the rest of you to come up as you feel led to nail your paper to the cross. Is there anyone who did not get a paper? And if you missed it, what we're doing is we're writing on this piece of paper something that you want to lay at the foot of the cross. You can come forward at this time as you feel led. If you're not going to forward, I just ask you to be silent and be in prayer, please. Again, I encourage you to close your eyes and just listen to the sounds that you hear.
Now from midday there was darkness over the whole land until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. At that hour Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Eli, Eli, sabachthani. Words that mean, my God, why have you forsaken me? Some of the bystanders said, look, he is calling for Elijah. One of them put a sponge full of vinegar on a stick and laid it to his lips. Others said, wait, let us see whether Elijah will come and take him down. Then Jesus, having uttered a loud cry, breathed in his last breath.
Suddenly, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from the top to the bottom. The earth shook and the rocks were split. Even the tombs of the dead were opened. Now, when the centurion on watch and the others who were with him saw all that was taking place, they were filled with awe and said, "This man truly was God's Son."
Let's read together Isaiah chapter 53, 4 through 9. This is the word of God for the people of God. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. Upon him was a chastisement that made us whole. With his stripes we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way. And the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed, he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. Like a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and like a sheep that before its shearers is dumb, so he opened not his mouth. By oppression, judgment, he was taken away. And as for his generation, who considered that he was cut off out of the land of the living, stricken for the transgression of my people, they made his grave with the wicked and with a rich man in his death, although he had done no violence, and there was no deceit in his mouth. May Jesus Christ, who for our sake became obedient unto death, even death on a cross, keep you and strengthen you this night and forever. Amen. I ask you now to exit the sanctuary in silence.